QMJHL's a week in. MLB playoffs are underway. Special guest Arden Zwelling. It's Sports QuaranTV. What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Sports QuaranTV. Chris, Dobson, Gerry Green coming at you. Thanks for tuning in. Gerry, we've got a great show. As I mentioned off the hop, we're going to kick it off talking about the QMJHL. We are a week into the year now. The season's underway. Some question marks coming up in regards to COVID. Seems to be ramping up a little bit, but looks like hockey is still going on. We're going to be talking MLB playoffs, of course, and we had a great sit-down interview with senior writer for Blue Jays Baseball and Sportsnet, Arden Zwelling. Can't wait. You're not going to want to miss that. We caught up with Arden a little earlier this week. Gerry, as mentioned, let's talk about the Q right away. A week in, did you get a chance to see anything? Did you get a chance to watch any of the games or take a look?
No, I'm a guy who I saw some of the highlights, Chris, and I like to dig into statistics. You know me, I love my statistics. I found it interesting. The opening weekend had home and home series, and they'll do that in the second weekend of the season will be home and home series. So the good news was that St. John got to open at home as they met the Charlottetown Islanders, but the Islanders were ready to play. And I don't know if St. John was. Of course, there's a lot of pressure on them this season, and not pressure, but I guess expectation on them to perform well. And what do? They lose both games, 4-2 and 5-2. And so does the Moncton Wildcats. They do so against Bathurst, lose in Bathurst, and then go home and Bathurst beats them. It's a 5-2, 4-2 combination there again. So you see Bathurst in Charlottetown sitting on top of the Maritime Division. Am I surprised? No. I'm surprised to see St. John 0-2, though.
Yeah, I think a lot of people were. And I mean, I had a chance to kind of tune in to, I was watching a bit of the Sea Dogs game. I was flipping back and forth between anything I could look at. And I will say, this St. John team, and again, don't read too much into it. They're 2 games into the season, but again, they're missing a very key piece in Ryan Francis. He's still out in Stockton right now. There's a lot of rumors speculating whether or not he may or may not come back to the Q. I would have to think that's just got to be falsified rumors just to get the media guys like us talking about it. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, I think it's a matter of Gordy Dwyer coming on in and trying to, settle the defense down a little bit. I was a little disappointed. I had a chance to watch Villeneuve in a couple of those games, and there's a couple moves that, possible giveaways. He got burnt. I think it's still early, but I don't want to talk necessarily about the negatives that St. John had. I want to talk about the positives taken away from what Bathurst did. I mean, Bathurst looked great. I mean, they're starting the year, they're 2-0. Offensively, they look good. Defensively, they're sound. And again, they're still without Hendrix Lapierre as well. So, I mean, it's a good thing. As far as the Wildcats go, you mentioned that. I'm not overly shocked to see them go 0-2 to start the year. What I did love to see, though, is in both games, they got off to a quick jump. They looked good. They were aggressive. There was surprisingly on opening night, Vincent Filion did not play. He wasn't even the backup that night. So that was a little odd. But again, the netminders held their own, and Moncton, for the young team that they are, I mean, they are 0-2, but these are learning experiences. It's early on, and, nothing to be too shocked or upset about yet.
Yeah, again, to comb through statistics, it looks like they weren't badly outplayed. The shots weren't lopsided. That again, they didn't get beat up on penalty kill or power play or anything like that. Ryan Francis not being in the St. John lineup, Chris, you've got to expect he's gonna be back. I mean, why wouldn't Calgary think that sending him back to his junior team that's going to be hosting the Memorial Cup wouldn't be a good thing for him? So I'm not surprised. I wouldn't be surprised if he comes back, but the question is when. And Hendrix Lapierre is reported to be turning heads at the Washington Capitals camp, and that would be a big blow for the Titan, who are expecting him to come along. And they got, who did they get another great production out of? Is Bennett MacArthur. He's hit 6 points. He's player of the week this week, and who's right beside him is Riley Kidney. They're a 1-2 combination that developed last year for the Titan, and they've picked up right where they left off. If you remember, Bennett MacArthur had 28 goals in 33 games last season, the abbreviated season, Chris, and he remains red hot. He was a main factor in the Titan winning. Now, here what happens this week. St. John plays Bathurst back-to-back. So these are a couple important games, and I know it's in the first 2 weeks of the season, but if Bathurst keeps, continuing the way they play and St. John doesn't buckle it down, defensively. And it was interesting to hear this week that Paul Boudelier is going to come back to St. John and shore up that defense, not on the ice, but off the ice as a coach. It'll be his second stint in St. John. So those two head-to-head games, they play Friday and Saturday in Bathurst Friday and St. John on Saturday, the Titan and the Sea Dogs do. And you know how much time they spent against each other last season, and
Right.
throw the Moncton Wildcats into that mix as well. So maybe getting a little bit sick of each other. But two important games, I think, for St. John than they are for Bathurst.
Yeah, no, and I think you're absolutely right. I think these are you got to find a way. If you're in Bathurst right now, you don't want to start the year 0-3 in your Memorial Cup year. You just don't want to do it. So you got to try to figure out a way to win. And I think they'll be ready to go. It's tough for me to look at the situation as a whole, just because obviously if you're looking at it, I hate to try to say, we're 2 games in, but hey, we're 2 games in. We're week 1 is in the books now. So you got to get it underway. Halifax, for example, I looked at Halifax. I think they're 1-0-1 or 1-1, I think.
Yeah, they split with Cape Breton. They had a home and home. And then
Right.
Halifax playing Charlottetown this weekend, and Moncton gets to play Cape Breton Friday
Right,
and
and
Sunday. They're going all the way to Cape Breton.
And Nashville has sent Zachary LaRue back to Halifax as well. So he'll be in the lineup this weekend. So I would look to see how I think Halifax is going to be surprisingly good this year.
Yeah.
They said I'm not going to say they're in the mix between the St. John's, the Bathurst, and the Charlottetowns of the world, but I think they're going to surprise. They're going to turn a few heads this season.
No, I have no doubts in what they can do. And Elliot Denier just got sent back from Philadelphia, I read the other day. So they're going to get all their pieces back and get their feet underneath them. And again, in an early part of the season, we just like to talk about what we've seen and heard and what we read and give some perspective. But again, I think an important series for St. John and Bathurst, home and home this weekend. That's something to keep your eye on.
Before I move on topics, sticking on, former Philadelphia walk-ons and then actually came out to Habs camp. Former Moncton Wildcat Mika Sear was in Montreal Canadiens camp, Jerry, and he was turning some heads too. And now he's back at the University of Moncton. But I think in the they played him in a couple of the exhibition games. He had 4 points in 3 games, 2 goals, 2 assists. And, they were very pleased with what they saw. And, you got to tip your cap to a guy, undrafted, goes to Philadelphia camp, goes back, and hey, now he's back at the University of Moncton. And, I can't wait now that AUS hockey is back this year, which we'll talk about a little later on. But overall, I'm excited to see what's going to happen. But Jerry, we got to move on because Major League Baseball, the playoff matchups at this point as we record are almost all set in stone. Before we get too deep into it, though, we got to talk about the heartbreaking season that was the Toronto Blue Jays, who basically held their own and at the end of the day came up just a bit short.
Yeah, I love the weekend of baseball, Chris. And the Jays did everything they were needed to do to force the Yankees and the Red Sox to win, and barely win indeed. But I'd still reflect back that they had their own fate in their own hands with the 3-game set they had with the Yankees earlier in the week, and they only won 1 of 3. There's that one game they needed, Chris. There's that 92nd victory that they needed to eat just to get into the wild card game, which is what they were fighting for. And make things very interesting. So many pundits, the writers and stuff were very disappointed south of the border that this exciting young team with all of the RBIs and all of the home runs and all the excitement around a young team didn't make it to the postseason. It was, again, no disrespect. It was the same old Yankees, Red Sox in the National League East, or American League East, rather. But I just point at that. There's a lot of ifs that would have happened throughout the season, where they played and how they played and what the bullpen did, but they did have control of those 3 games against the Yankees. They had all hands on deck and they only won 2 of 3.
Yeah, everything I say, I basically echo your sentiment here. I think it was absolutely, you're bang on. I think that Yankee series was the difference maker. But let's get a little more in depth because this week I had a chance to catch up with the senior writer for Blue Jays baseball and Sportsnet, Arden Zwelling, to have a in-depth conversation about his thoughts. Take a look. Super excited to be joined today by senior writer for Blue Jays baseball and Sportsnet, Arden Zwelling. Arden, thanks for doing this, man. I'm sure over the last couple of days specifically, things have been hectic for you guys. I do have, some great questions. As sad as it was to see what just happened with the Blue Jays, there was some silver linings out of it. If you look at this young ball club, I want to start by asking you, can you put into context what it actually means to win 91 games in the regular season, doing that over 3 different home cities, if you would? I mean, that had to have been some sort of challenge.
Oh, it was a massive challenge. I think that's why so many of the players, speaking to us after their season ended on the Jumbotron with the Boston Red Sox moving on, after they spoke to us, they were really emotional. They were really torn up, right? These guys are a little bit, distraught might be a bit much, but like you could tell they put a lot into this season. I mean, all the challenges they faced, as you mentioned, from not only the moves, but we sort of forget the uncertainty that came before the moves. So going through spring training, the uncertainty of where the season would begin, and then going to Dunedin and playing in a minor league ballpark, not having all the facilities that players are used to, and going through that process and thinking, how long are we going to be here? Are we going to leave? When we leave, are we going to Toronto? Are we going to go to Buffalo? What's going to happen? What am I going to do with my family? Do I need to get another lease in another city? How am I going to get all my belongings from point A to point B? Then going to Buffalo and doing that all over again. And finally getting back to Toronto. It's really reflected in their record, right? The Blue Jays went 25-11 at Rogers Center, and they were right around 500 at both Buffalo and Dunedin. So I think that the challenges of this season really showed up on the field.
It's funny. I'm going to get you to clarify something for us. You just touched on it. They said that watching the Red Sox game of the Jumbotron in Toronto, is it true that they allowed the fans to stay in the building to watch the rest of that game?
All the fans were there. They threw it up on the Jumbotron right after. Hazel May interviewed George Springer at the end of the game, and then immediately it went up on the Jumbotron. It was funny, man. It was only about 2 or 3 minutes until Devers hit that home run is the thing. So, I mean, the air was let out of the place pretty quickly, but it was a cool sort of brief moment and period of time there where all these fans were watching and trying to will the Washington Nationals on.
If you look at it from a perspective of, you looked at all the talent this roster had, I'd love to get your opinion on, maybe one of the most underrated Jays on this roster and how valuable that person would have been throughout the season.
I think Marcus Semien, which is kind of funny to say that he was underrated because he's probably going to be an MVP finalist, but he was a little bit in the shadow of Vladimir Guerrero Jr. all year, just because Vlad had this unbelievable season, and he's going to finish as the runner-up to Shohei Ohtani for the American League MVP award. But Marcus Semien deserves to be right there with him. I mean, played all 162 games at second base, missed only 11 innings all year. I mean, the score had to be like 13-2 to get this guy out of the game, and even then it was only in the last inning or two. 45 home runs as a second baseman, major league record. No second baseman in the history of baseball has ever done that. I mean, just had an absolutely spectacular season on both sides of the ball. And then all the off-field stuff I was mentioning earlier, Marcus Semien's got 3 young boys under the age of 5. One of them a newborn who arrived just a couple weeks before he signed with Toronto, and he had the 3 boys with him throughout the season, his wife Tara. So they were going through the whole process of the uncertainty and moving and trying to raise kids and just living out of suitcases basically for 6 to 8 months of the year. And by the way, Marcus Semien is also on the MLBPA executive subcommittee. Only 8 players in the game are on that, and it's a CBA year. So there are a lot of it's not a light workload, that role this year. So I just think that Marcus Semien, all things considered holistically, had such an impressive year with what he was able to accomplish.
You'd almost think that I ran these questions by you before we started, because you're segueing perfectly into my next shot. And that is, of course, the big storyline is going to be Robbie Ray, Marcus Semien, both guys looking to, obviously Jays fans would love to see both of them back in, hopefully the powder blues, my favorite unis, by the way, of the Jays. But overall, I mean, I know that nobody knows this for sure. And I saw the Semien interview, and he said that obviously they had a great group of guys, probably the best offense. The mound was good. He wants to be there. In your humble opinion, you think there's a chance that these guys can sign one or both of these guys?
Both is going to be extremely hard and maybe even a little bit unrealistic. Just in an open market environment, you're bidding against 29 other clubs, and obviously not all 29 are going to be in on both those players, but a lot of teams are going to be in on Robbie Ray, because what's every contender looking for every winter? Starting pitching, and he's the best starting pitcher available, so he's going to have a lot of suitors. And then Marcus Semien, for all those reasons I just cited before, I mean, he is such a perfect fit for really any roster, anybody who is looking for a middle infielder. Even some clubs talked to him last offseason about playing third base. I mean, he wants to stay up the middle, but if if you pay a guy enough, he's gonna play where you want him to. So I'm sure some of those West Coast teams are going to be involved with Marcus Semien, thinking about the Los Angeles Dodgers and the San Francisco Giants. So the Blue Jays are obviously going to continue talking to Robbie Ray and Marcus Semien throughout the offseason. They're going to keep those lines of, the discussions have already begun. And I think they're going to be, they will continue into the winter, as the Blue Jays do with all free agents. The first big domino that has to fall is the collective bargaining agreement. I just think that the Blue Jays are going to want to know what the new CBA looks like and what types of rules they're dealing with in terms of a luxury tax and spending, and when when players are hitting free agency, like early year players, because you think about it, the Blue Jays have to balance the fact that Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is going to get more expensive this winter, and Teoscar Hernandez and Jose Barrios, Bo Bichette's getting closer to arbitration. Maybe you want to extend one of Barrios or Hernandez or even Vlad or Bo. There are so many balls in the air. So Blue Jays going to want to know just what the rules are under the CBA, and then once that's settled, they can start thinking about how they're going to sort of disperse and cut up the pie with the payroll that they have to spend.
No, man, so well put. And you talk about pitching specifically, and one of the names that of course gets associated with the Blue Jays and was Nate Pearson, and what's going to happen in the offseason. Do you know if there's an offseason plan for Nate to make sure that he's healthy and ready to go?
It might include an operation on that sports hernia. We'll see. We haven't heard anything about that yet, but I wonder if we'll hear something about that later this week. Just it was kind of rumored a little bit throughout the season, and the Blue Jays and Pearson kind of just shelved it and said, we'll tackle that once we get to the winter. So they're there now. So they got to first and foremost get his health sorted out so that he's not suffering the recurring groin issues they dealt with this year. And then from there, once he's healthy and back up to speed, they obviously have to do a bit of work with him just to refine the command and get him in the zone more consistently. And I think he enters spring training trying to be a starter again. And, look, he's getting older, and like the clock is ticking on him, certainly. And he wouldn't be the first guy who tried as a starter, and just couldn't put it together and ended up having a career as a reliever. But I think that the window is still very much open for him to be a starter. If he can get in the zone more consistently and just be more efficient with his pitches, the stuff is there. We've all seen it. High 90s fastball, wipeout slider. He's got the curveball. He's got the changeup. He just needs to locate more consistently and be in the zone more consistently. So you think about it, took Robbie Ray until this year to figure out how to be in the zone more consistently. Robbie Ray is 30. It took him that long. So Nate Pearson at just 25 is trying to figure that out as well. It's going to be really fascinating to see if he can figure that out, because that really is a big pivot point for the Blue Jays. If they've got a starter in Nate Pearson, that's huge for their rotation. They're going to need to backfill if Robbie Ray leaves and Steven Matz leaves as well. If Nate Pearson's going to be a reliever, well, now you need some starting help.
All right, and last question I'm going to ask you before I let you get out of here, and that is, how scared should the American League be of the 2022 Blue Jays?
The Yankees were scared. They didn't want to play them, in the four-way tiebreaker scenario, the Yankees chose to go to Fenway. If that scenario materialized, they wanted to go play the Red Sox. They could have played the Blue Jays or the Red Sox, and they wanted to play the Red Sox. So I think that says it all right there. Look, the Blue Jays were the best team in the American League over the last 2 months, essentially since the trade deadline, when Jose Barrios showed up, when the team got back to Toronto. It was just, full steam ahead from that point for the Blue Jays. So it's going to be tough to carry that over into next season, especially if you don't have Robbie Ray and Marcus Semien. You are, if you lose those guys, you're losing the likely AL Cy Young winner and a likely AL MVP finalist. Like, it's not easy to replace that level of production, but you look at the core that is in place right now: Vladimir Guerrero Jr., Bo Bichette, Alek Manoah, Teoscar Hernandez, etc. There's a really good core here, and there's a really good future that you can build on. So it's a good place to build from. And I think that if you were, an executive just kind of looking for a starting point, looking for a place to build from, I think the Blue Jays, where they're at, all things considered, young core, payroll flexibility, etc., I think that's as good of a starting point as you're going to find in MLB.
All right, and I want to thank you for your time today, man. I appreciate it. Anytime we get some talkers to get to talk baseball out here on the East Coast, we absolutely appreciate it, man. Thanks for doing this. If you ever do make it out to the East Coast way, pops on me, buddy.
I would love to. Thank you.
So there you have it. As Arden was telling us, you talk about, I think one of the most surprising ones to me was when he talked about the fact that he thought that Marcus Semien was one of the most underrated Blue Jays. Although once he explained why, coming in this 1 year, doing what he did is impressive. He made me a believer. That's for sure.
Yeah, no, he was 102 RBIs, Chris, and That's, four guys that had for the Blue Jays that had over 100 RBIs, including Bo Bichette. So it was an exciting season that had so many turns and wrinkles to it. But the fact that then the Red Sox and the Yankees go and play,
Right.
and you have the so-called Cy Young candidate, Garrett Cole, I'll say that again, didn't look good. He didn't look good in September, Chris. That's why I kind of feel like he's a so-called candidate for the Cy Young. Maybe he had a great first half of the season, but every game I saw him in the second half of the season, including that wild card game, he didn't look sharp.
No, in fact, at this point, I think, and again, I'm sure maybe the decision had already been made, but if it hadn't, I would honestly believe that Robbie Ray has made a serious candidate for that Cy Young award. And, for Blue Jays fans, he deserves it. I mean, right now you got to figure out how. I saw a great interview with Marcus Semien talking about Robbie Ray, how great this ball team is and how they would love to play here again. So I'll be really curious. Fun fact too, I saw that Marcus Stroman was tweeting out that possibly he'd be open to, he'd be excited to come back as well. Whether or not they need him, who knows? But either way, it's good. But talking about the Red Sox and the Yankees, how exciting was that day of baseball? I mean, unfortunately, everybody knew schedule-wise, the Red Sox had the easier the schedules between everybody. But you got to tip your cap to Tampa Bay. And the fact of the matter is that they didn't let up. They could have easily sat some guys and made sure that, this is what they want to do. They're already in the postseason. They'd already clinched home field advantage. But they came out and they played the New York Yankees to an absolute gem of a series.
I think they're going to be tough to beat the Rays.
Of course.
But how scared or how confident are the Dodgers headed into a wild card game against the St. Louis Cardinals? I will be shocked if the Dodgers lose. And I know Cardinals will come in on the run. That's like an 8th seed in the NHL playing the 1st seed. Let's say a Carolina versus Tampa Bay and knocking them off. Yeah, but this is just one game, and pitching controls a lot of baseball. Hockey's a whole different animal. And you got Scherzer starting, the Bulldogs starting for the Dodgers. I'd be shocked. And Wainwright, I guess, for St. Louis, but I'd be shocked if the Dodgers lose.
I just think there's something about that team. Now that a lot of the reports are coming out that they could be the front runners for Marcus Semien in the offseason. So who knows? I mean, the Dodgers just seem to have gotten better year after year after year. And every time you see what they're doing, but yeah, I agree with you. But the National League has been exciting overall. I do think the Dodgers win it. You're right. You talk about the 101 games, but at this point, I'm just excited playoff baseball is here, man. I've been looking forward to this for so long.
Chris, just one thing, if we can talk, and I know our show's running along quickly because we had a great interview that sandwiched its way in between. But what wasn't exciting in the NFL this weekend? Did you watch the Patriots and the Buccaneers? A game that was not memorable, a accomplishment by Tom Brady that appeared not memorable. It wasn't acknowledged much at all. And the Bucs squeak out a victory versus the Patriots. That was my biggest letdown of the weekend, was that particular game. I was hoping the Patriots would win.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if maybe Tom's just not used to cold rain in Florida anymore. I don't know what that situation's like, but it was kind of sloppy on both ends. I mean, it wasn't a very exciting game. You're absolutely right. But ultimately, Tom Brady has, he's the man of history now, which is no surprise. Also, with his win against New England, has now beaten every team in the NFL, all 32 teams. I don't think there's anything this man can't do.
Yeah, that's a cool stat that he did that. But then again, the Patriots did have a chance to win, and the question was, why did Belichick not try on 4th down to get the first down rather than try to kick a 56-yard field goal in the rain, in the wind, in New England? Curious enough. And the other thing I liked about the weekend was the Jets got their first win.
How exciting was that?
The New York Jets and the New York Giants got their first win. So the only team left on the snide, Chris, do you know who it is that hasn't won a game yet?
Not off the top, bud.
Detroit Lions.
Detroit
Lions still haven't won a game yet. And know who hasn't lost a game yet, Chris?
Who's that, Jerry?
Arizona Cardinals.
Oh, of course.
And didn't they have a great victory against
Kyler Murray? That
was the game of the weekend.
Yeah, Kyler Murray is so good. He's having a breakout year this year. But as far as the Giants go too, I think Daniel Jones, to me, I wanted to see exactly what he could do. Mac Jones, to me, I think is still a little quiet. Actually, as a New England fan, we've only got 1 minute to the wrap, but I want to ask your opinion on it so far. Are you happy with what you've seen out of Mac Jones?
That game, he was awesome. He was better than Brady in the game on Sunday night. This is his 4th game in. They're 1-3. They go on the road this weekend. I think that he's much more comfortable. I see he's poised with the ball. I think they figured out what he can and can't do, and Belichick will arrange a game plan that'll suit him perfectly.
Absolutely. You heard it here first, fans. Jerry telling you, go get your Mac Jones jerseys because it's exactly what's going to skyrocket. Hey, Colts got their first win of the season, too. We've only got 30 seconds, but I got to get that.
Oh, well, I thought you would get that.
Hey, I didn't have a whole lot of time. Carson Wentz looked unbelievable. Now we just keep that train rolling.
The game to watch this week, Chris, it's on Sunday night. Buffalo goes into Kansas City. Buffalo 3-1, Kansas City 2-2.
Absolutely. Well, Jerry, it is everyone's favorite time of the week. It's time for the wrap, and we're going to start right off the hop. I mentioned it earlier. AUS hockey is back this year. It started this week. How excited are you?
Well, Chris, they've been out for a long time. Remember when I think the national championships was canceled in Halifax when in March of 2020, going all the way back to then. But the Reds of the University of Brunswick played the preseason with 3 straight victories, and they outscored the opposition 14-0, Chris. They start against Moncton and then go on the road against PEI this weekend. Meanwhile, PEI will be in Moncton to take on the Aigle Bleu on Saturday. But interesting name to keep a track of this winter. Griffin Outhouse is the goaltender for the UNB Reds. Keep your eye on him. He played junior hockey with the Victoria Royals. He's from Williams Lake, BC. Keep your eye on that name. It's going to be curious to see how many people take notice of the name Outhouse. Meanwhile, Brooks and Bryson are going to go at it. Chris, in what way, though?
Absolutely. The 5th version of The Match will be happening November 26th at the Wynn Golf Club in Las Vegas, Nevada. You talked about it. Brooks Koepka, Bryson DeChambeau coming off that Ryder Cup. Looked like they started making things work a little bit. Maybe they'll become besties. Who knows? But overall, the things to note about this is that it's a little different. They're doing a 12-hole tournament versus an 18-hole tournament. I'm excited for it. I really enjoy this matchup. The only thing that's a little different this time, and I believe that they've done it once. Tiger and Phil did it one-on-one, but everybody else has always had a team. This is another one-on-one matchup. Either way, I'm excited. I love the way they put these events together, and I think it's great for the fans and the viewership. Jerry, also, first week's in the book with the MHL. Yeah. What went down?
Well, all 12 teams played, Chris. It was an exciting weekend, of which the Summerside Western Capitals, who are in the North Division of the MHL, went to the northwest corner of New Brunswick, beat Grand Falls, and then went into Edmundston. The note about Edmundston is they have the best attendance of anybody in the league, Chris. Summerside was there on Sunday. Summerside won 3-2. The attendance was 2,134 at the Centre Jean Dague in Edmundston. And the other interesting note about the Blizzard in Edmundston, they formerly were named the Dieppe Commandos. Yes, they've now been in Edmundston 7 years. It's been a great success. Game to watch this week is Summerside going into Fredericton. Summerside's 2-0 against the Fredericton Red Wings, and that'll be Friday night at the Grand Harvey at 7 o'clock. Make sure you be there.
Thanks for tuning in. We could do this all the time. Thanks for watching, guys. We'll see you next week.